Just whatever, just shut the door.
Welcome to TORAH Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 35 of Controversial Issues. Today we are going to be discussing the Nephilim, giants, and dinosaurs. Everybody, welcome back to the show. Crazy guy. Crazy for taking on these topics,
here,
man.
I think.
Hey, look here. Listen, watch, here we go. Yes, Sarah, you just called. Whoop, hold on. I gotta turn my Wi-Fi off. Okay, there we go. Wi-Fi is officially off. Welcome to TORAH Talk. You are live on the air, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Say hi to Rabbi. Say hi to Rabbi Coffman.
Hello, world.
And hello, world, too. Yes, you are live. So just want to let you know, we're actually going to be covering, like right now, the questions, or at least two of the three questions you brought to me yesterday. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So
okay, I'll hang up and listen.
Okay, sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Kaufman.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye. Cool. Nice. Okay, cool. Now I'll turn my phone down. She has special privileges because for most of you people out there who don't know who that was Sarah Acker. She took a major part in help creating TORAH Talk 3 years ago. So she's always got a front row seat in any scenario, which is why Rabbi Coffman, would you try to scare the crap out of her at Purim? No, well, she wasn't there at Purim, though, was she?
No, I wasn't. No, she wasn't here on Shavuos. Actually.
Thank God, because if she was there on Purim, dude, you would have freaked her out.
No, she'd be dead. No, this year on Purim is going to be a few days after my daughter gets married. So one of the festive meals is certainly going to be on Purim. So that should be
nice.
Should be It should be kind of wild. So
very cool. Very cool.
We'll see if he still wants to be part of the family or not. So.
That's one way to test it out. Just be sure to prop a few guns here and there, shotgun here, and a little chainsaw in the back corner.
No problem, right?
Oh my goodness gracious. Yep. So basically, there was another question that we may eventually get to, which I think would be a good for our hot topic, and that is, if in fact, I'm going to bring that up first. And I realize that every time I drop something on you and I say keep it short, you're like, wait, what? You can't keep that short. Okay, so I'm going to say this to you, and I'm going to say keep it short, and I'm already expecting your can't do that answer, but I got to say it anyway. So something that's not in the title that was part of there was like three questions there was, if Adam and Eve were the only creation, and then Cain was cast out, right? And they said there would be a curse upon anybody who killed him. Who would have been there to kill him to begin with, and who would he have married? How would all this marriage stuff work if they were only Adam and Eve? So we don't have to cover that one today because I'd rather get the other two first, and if we got time, we can cover that. If not, we can kind of catch that one next week. So those are just few options for you. So why don't we start with Nephilim? and then we'll go to T-Rex after that. How's that?
T-Rex. I don't even have. I don't even see any of those movies on what do you call it on.
Yeah, what was it called?
Anything about that?
Right.
What do you call it? Yeah, Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. That's.
There you go.
Anyway, let's just see the text. The text is interesting.
Okay.
Chapter 6.
Bereshit.
Right.
Okay. Genesis.
Right.
6.
Genesis chapter 6. So it's the end of the first Parsha, and it says that came to pass, man began to increase upon the face of the ground. Daughters were born to them, son of the rulers. Interesting, these are son of princes and judges, right? Even though they're called Elohim, right? It always implies rulership, Rashi says. Also, daughters of man can refer to the general populace. In either case, it says they saw the daughters of man are good. They took for themselves wives from whoever they chose. And God said, my spirit's not happy with man, etc. And then, so that was before. And then you have the Nephilim, these giants on the earth. And that's verse 5. It says, sons of the rulers would consort with the daughters of man. Right? They were mighty, etc. From old were men of devastation. He's talking about giants. Right? He's talking about giants. So
now, question for you.
The word.
Why? I'm going to ask you questions along the way because I know I've got some elementary questions that a lot of people are probably wanting to ask along the way too. And I think.
How do you know that? You make assumptions, and you say everyone's going to have a million questions. And here, Annie, you're the one asking the question. You say I'm the one who's got the question.
you know, the main reason why is because I've actually had these questions posed to me countless times, and they usually all fall in the same category, generally speaking. So, first I got a green leak I got to fix here real fast. Bear with me 1 second. Black clip is off just a hair, and there we go. Okay, so the sons of God, or princes and rulers, and the daughters of men, meaning the general populace. So if that's all it takes to create a giant, and you're going to say, no, that's not it, but the text makes it seem that way. Because as there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God... Okay, shut up. I just answered
one of my questions.
Rulers,
yeah. Right. Sons of the rulers, yeah.
Okay, and so now I do want to ask you a question. Is this the very first possible mentioning of autonomy being lost, like in the sense of things like, because it almost seems like if you could put that in today's terms, right? You could, in the first two, it would almost say like this, that the sons of the Levites, or whatever case may be, right, went to the daughters of the Goyim, and next thing you know, all Judaism is lost. Is that kind of a leak of an idea that's happening here?
Well, if you look at what's said in between, right, you miss one very important verse over here, verse 3. It says, God said, my spirit shall not contend evermore concerning man, since he is but flesh, his days shall be 120 years. Then he talks about the Nephilim, and then he talks about destroying the world.
Okay.
Right? That he's going to destroy, he's going to destroy the world. So we see one common thing, and that is that man began to increase, and a man began to increase. It wasn't like everyone was doing the right thing, right? In other words, God says man's ways are inherently, evil, right? That's why God says in verse 6, he says, God reconsidered having made man on earth, and he had heartfelt sadness. That would seem to say that God made a mistake, right? That God totally made a mistake. In other words, why did I create man in the first place? If I know man is going to sin, and they're evil, they're going to have a tremendous evil inclination, I'm going to wipe them off, but I have regret, right? It seems like the Torah is saying I have regret. So just on that for 1 second, God can't have regret. He knows the future. It's impossible for him he knows what's going to happen, right? So here it's a prelude, right, to show that, there are a lot of things going on. Man increased, right? Man increased tremendously, and then it says, okay, man began to increase, and then you have these Nephilim, right? Now, if you want to look at that question and say, well, it looks like it's a prelude to all this, right? So, but things were going bad before that, right? Torah doesn't tell you that, right? But things are not going, so well, at least the way God had it in mind. This was just like, the coup de grace. This was just like the final thing, because as it says in verse 3, after you had the sons of the rulers, saw the daughters, and whatever, they did the jitterbug or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
He says, my spirit wasn't happy. He said, God says I'm not happy with the way things have turned out. And therefore, I'm only going to make man's life 120 years. Because if I make it longer, they're going to sin tremendously. Right? So at least I'm going to cut them down. Their sinning will be less by 120 years. Right? So everything gone on up until this point has been bad. Right? You have the 10 generations between Adam and Noah. Noah came along. What did Noah do? What's his name? What does his name mean? It means to comfort. What was his comfortness? What did he comfort? He made different instruments to make it easier to farm, to take away thistles and bristles and and all that. So he made these instruments. It says that God, he was compassionate, right? His name means compassion. So good. So that's what we're going to have. He's going to be saved. His children are going to be saved, and everyone else is going to be destroyed. Now, come along.
Before we get too far, before you get too far, verse 4, I just want to touch on that again. It says, there were giants in the earth in those days. Let's see, and also after that there were giants in the land. When the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children, and to them the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So,
right.
Explain that. I mean, is this we're talking about, like, because in your mind you think of things like Hercules and these super, like, people who maybe they existed
right here, baby, right there.
No, I'm pretty sure the Hulk wasn't one of them. So, just kind of touch base a little bit on verse 4 for me before we get too far along.
So, if you're talking about these giants, first of all, you have to explain who they were. Right, they weren't giants in the sense that they were 8 feet tall, kind of like Jack and the Beanstalk, something something like that. These what is the root of the word Nephilim? The word is nun pei lamed, means to fall. Right, it means that they fell. Right, now now this could be go back, rewind what we spoke about, about angels having free will, right? These Nephilim seemingly, are angels that come down to this world. Now, why would they come down to this world? What's the whole point over here, right? So the Medrash, the Zohar says that they had a discussion with God, and they said, look what you did. You created man. You gave him one mitzvah. What was the mitzvah you gave man to do? Don't eat from the tree of knowledge. That's the only thing you have to do. Don't eat from the tree. What does man do? Eats from the tree, right? So he brought the evil inclination inside of himself, and even though he rationalized and said it was a great thing, because every time he does the right thing, his soul goes up exponentially, right? It elevates his body. If he doesn't do the right thing, he debases the body, debases the soul, that we spoke about, right? We spoke about before. But what was their claim? Their claim is that you gave the Torah to the wrong. You created the world, you created man, it was a bad mistake, right? Man was a bad creation. So what did they claim? They claim if you put us angels in the body of a man, we'll show you how it's done. We'll live in this world properly, right? Because we're angels, we're not man, we're angels, right? So what happened? They're given this test. God says, okay, let's see. Let's see what you big angels can do. Sticks the angels in the body. And what does the body do? The body overcomes them. They don't have, once you're an angel outside the body, you have no free will. Right? You're doing God's will. He says jump, you say how high, right? That's what goes on in the spiritual world. You have no other way out. If you're put in a body, you're sort of encased, kind of like Superman and Kryptonite. You're encased in this body where the soul should make the body explode, but it doesn't. The body comes from this world. The body overcomes the soul, right? So what happens? These angels come down, and the body is going to encase the soul. It's going to encase this, this angel, because we've seen many times, we've seen a number of times where seemingly angels come, in the guise of man, right? You see by Elijah the prophet many times. You see an angel by the story of when before Shmuel was born with Elkanah and Penina, right? So you've seen it. We've seen a number of times this happen, but their claim is we're going to go in the body and we're not going to be like man. What does the Torah say? They're on the earth on those days, and you had the sons of the rulers that would be with the daughters of man, and they would. So what would they do? They were just sitting there playing tiddlywinks. I mean, what were these people doing there, right? They weren't there just doing nothing. So while this was going on, while this is going on with everybody else, right? So they themselves also overcome by the body, right? In other words, they're not living in Victorian England. They're not serving God the way they served them before, because they're in a body, right? The fact that they're in a body now makes them more human, and the fact that it makes it more human takes away their spiritual side. No matter how great the angel is, he's still encased in a physical body. Right? He's still going to have desires and needs like the physical body. Question is, how much of their soul capacity can they use to overcome it? That really is the question. And the end result is they failed. Right? They failed the test. How do we know? Because in verse 6, God says he reconsidered having made men. And if an angel comes in the guise of a man, and he does the same things, even worse, let's say, than man, or he's doing exactly what man does, then he said, I blew it in a certain way, right? I have remorse. I have remorse for what I've done, because can't even take an angel, put him in an earthly body, and have him do my will the way he should. Right? So that was the test. God took him to the test. And, oh, you think you're going to be so great? Fine. I'm going to slap you down in this world. Right? I'm going to put you in a body, and we'll see. Are you like everybody else? Are you like the people of the world or not? Or are you more like me, more godlike, more angelic, more angel-like? Answer, they're just like everybody else. They failed. That's why they're called Nephilim. It means giants, but it's also a play on the word. They fell. Right? They fell along the way. So therefore, you're thinking. So what do we learn out from here? We learn out very simply that even an angel, if he comes into a body, can be corrupted by the body. Where an angel said that can't happen. Right? They claim that's an impossibility, because I'm all spiritual. If I'm all spiritual, I'll do your will no matter where I am. Right? Whether I'm on this earth, I'm a rock, I'm a this, whatever. Whatever form you put me in, one of twin powers, form of, whatever. Form of a person. He puts the angel, he puts the angel in the body. Let's see. Does he act like an angel, or does the body overcome him? So you see that even an angel that's put in this world can be corrupted by the body. Now you see other times that's not the case. You see other times, the time of Abraham, 3 angels come visit him, right? They're sort of dressed up as 3 Arabs, right? They come to the tent of Abraham, and Abraham says, "Oh, great, we got guests." He's the 3rd day of circumcision. It's like, "Great, we get guests." It's like, "Sarah, go make something, hurry up." We got these guests, and they were in the guise of, basically 3 Arabs. Now each one had their own thing to do, right? One to tell Sarah's going to have a child, right? One to heal Abraham, and one to overthrow Sodom. So one thing you learn from there is that when an angel comes, to this world to be a messenger, he can only do one thing at a time. He's only given one command. He's not given more than one command, right? But anyway, in this case, in the cases of the angels that came to Lot, right, and the people of the city want to abuse them, and Lot doesn't allow them to do that. At the same time, they're used in the sense that they're not going to be corrupted, right? They're not going to be corrupted. So usually if an angel is if an angel is in the form, in a human form, right? Normally he's coming to do a message, whatever God wants him to do. In this case, they totally failed, right? And God shows that, yeah, you think you're going to be better than man, you're going to be just as bad, if not worse, right? And when they come down, you see that's the case, right? It doesn't matter, the fact that the Torah says they were mighty, they were great men of devastation. This means they were strong. It doesn't mean they were 8 feet tall, right? I mean, it could be they were taller than normal, but whatever the case is, says that they were, they were strong, right? Nonetheless, their inclination, because of being in the body, overcame them.
So why
right?
point
So
it out then?
They were just like everybody else.
If it wasn't so dynamic, then why even point it out? If they were just like everybody else.
No, that's the end result.
Oh, okay.
They claimed, their claim was, we're not going to be like everybody else. You slap us in this world, we're going to be better. You made a mistake. There's a disagreement between the house of Hill and the house of Shammai for 2.5 years, whether it was a good thing for man to be created or not. The end conclusion is it was a bad thing that man was created. But they conclude and say the fact that man's created, okay, we have to look into our actions. We have to become the great people and reach our potential that we can. Fine. So the Nephilim come and say, we're better than man. You put us in this world, we'll be better. Comes the Torah and says it's not true. Because even you are going to be corrupted just like man was corrupted. They're going to say, oh yeah, prove it. So God says, fine, go, I'm going to put you in this world. We're going to see what you do. So what's the end result? God says, I have regret making man. Right? So right. They failed, they failed the test, but it was, in other words, I think it's according to the Medrash. According to the Medrash, they're claiming, we know better. We are better than man. You should have given the Torah to us. Right? How did Moshe get the Torah? Right? Moshe had to convince the angels to give him the Torah. Right? And they were breathing fire. So I guess anytime anyone breathes fire, they're probably going to win against you. So God says, Moshe, go ahead, answer them. Go answer them, and they're going to leave you alone. So what does Moshe say? He said, do you have parents? They say no. They said, well, the Torah says you have to honor your parents. They said, well, do you eat and drink? Here the Torah says you have to make blessings. Before and after you eat. It says, can you do that? Torah says you have to keep Shabbos. You guys keep Shabbos like like we're going to keep over here? Every answer is no. That's it. They clear the pathway. He takes the Torah. Right? They had nothing to, they had nothing to answer. But their claim is knocked off. Right? Their claim is totally knocked off because, they can't say we're better than man. Because you see the conclusion afterwards. God has regret he made man. Right? This is after everything being done. But if I was going to make a very simple inference, I would say, okay, this is the last straw. I gave an angel the opportunity to come to this world to prove that he's better than man. And what did he do? He proved just the opposite. Right? And now if an angel can't do it, and they can't do my will properly in the guise of a man, what about mankind? Right? So God says, I'm going to destroy man. And I understand man, man does terrible things, and they're evil because they have an evil inclination, etc. But it doesn't mean they still cannot serve me. So I'm going to wipe them out now, and I'll never wipe them out again. Right? That's God's eternal promise. That's God's eternal promise, to Noah. Okay. But again, God sees the future, so God understood what man could be. And just because he saw the future doesn't mean that man doesn't have greater potential. I mean, there are righteous people in every generation. Okay. Right? If there are righteous people in every generation, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if people fail. Right? The fact is that they have the potential to be great people. Forget about what else is around them.
Okay. Let me jump in. Okay, so just to clarify, the men of renowned, right? It's talking about here. This is in Genesis. This isn't like in, Malachi. This is like
Right.
early. So what are they
Right.
talking about? Give me an example of the men of renown is talking about.
You're talking about sons of princes and judges.
Like who? I mean, is there an example, or do we just kind of like take Genesis 6:4? No, not 6:4. 6. Where's it at that says 120 years? Okay. Oh, here we go. Mighty men. Yeah, 6:4 at the end of 6:4. It says the same became mighty men which were of old,
Yeah,
men
again,
of renown.
in every generation,
Okay.
from Adam to Noah, right? So people that weren't worth anything, they just said, okay, this one had this many children, he had children, whatever, he lived this amount of years, next, right? Until we get to somebody, somebody who's important, right? So there are individuals, that are important. You got Methuselah, the one who lived the longest.
Mm-hmm.
You have Enoch, right, that walked with God, right? You have whatever. You have different people,
Okay.
right? So there.
Okay.
So
That's
there,
fair enough. Fair enough.
Again, if you go through the generations, it doesn't. It only mentions. It's just going through the genealogy. It doesn't mention everybody.
Okay.
Right? It mentions the ones that are significant. You had to mention Enoch. You had to mention Methuselah to get to Noah.
Right.
Right? Why'd you have to mention Noah? You need to mention Noah and his 3 kids, and eventually you're going to go down the line in order to get to Abraham. Right? Then you have Abraham, you got Yitzhak, you got Yaakov to the Jewish people. Right? So you're only going to stop in certain places where the main character is going to come.
Good point.
And therefore, whoever's important, is going to be there. Does that mean there weren't other people around? Of course there are other people around. Right? They're just, they're not necessarily mentioned. Doesn't mean that they're not important, though.
Okay, let's move forward. Click to the next channel. Okay, now we're going to jump right on to the dinosaurs. Now, I know in Job it talks about,
Leviathan.
the Leviathan. It says, "Is his tail not as great as a cedar tree?" I mean, if you've seen it, look outside, find a cedar tree. These things are massive. We're talking 100 feet tall, 50,
Right.
60 feet tall. So if there he's talking about this animal that has a tail the size of a great cedar tree, not a small one, then apparently he must have seen a dinosaur. So is there?
I don't know if it's a dinosaur or what, but keep in mind, what does he call? The Leviathan is when it says that God made the big fish.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, he actually calls him. Sorry, I can't even say it's Leviathan. It's not the Leviathan. He calls him a tanin. Right. Some say, I don't know. Some say it's a whale. Some say it's a crocodile. I don't know. Something like that.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't have to be a land animal then. In other words,
it could be. I mean,
Right,
whatever.
right. I
It
see
could
what you
be.
mean.
It's not clear. Not clear what it is. I mean, the whole question: if God knew that, if they would multiply, they'd destroy the world. So why create male and female altogether? Why create it if you know
Right.
that's going to happen? So
Right.
There's a lot of Kabbalah over there. Anyway, but in general, when you look at the end of Book of Job, I mean, it sounds pretty scary what he's talking about, right? What type of animal that this Leviathan is. I mean, he's got steel teeth. I mean, his back's full of, I don't know, iron or who knows what. I mean, it sounds like you think of any scary movie, and draw this person up. Yeah, maybe it was like a dinosaur, I guess. I don't know. Could be. This is one nasty creature you don't want to meet in a dark alley, or not a dark alley, right? Someone you don't you don't want to come in contact with. Make Freddy Krueger look like Mary Poppins or something.
That's funny.
Anyway, we're not gonna digress here, but the point, you have to keep in mind that Rashi says when man eats from the tree of knowledge. Right? Why doesn't God want him to eat from the tree of knowledge? He says because it's going to be like us. Right? In other words, man will become like God. And in that sense, make decisions, be able to reason, whatever. But at the same time, there's a question: what was God doing before God created the world? Right? You go to Genesis chapter. We'll make it easy. Go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Right? Breshis bara Elokim ez hashamayim ve'ez haaretz. God created the heaven and the earth. What was before that? All right, let's say better. Sorry, in the beginning of God's creating.
There you go. That's what I was
Right?
going to ask. Great.
You have the heavens and the earth. Right? So what was before that? 13 principles of faith and Maimonides. Before that was God. When the world gets destroyed after 6,000 years, and the Messiah comes, there's going to be 1,000 years of chaos, like in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, right? When the chaos that enveloped the earth before the earth is formed, or before the earth is separated, whatever, all these things are separated. So what do you have? So you have God, right? At the end of days, after these 6,000 years, you're going to have these 1,000 years, and then you're going to have, the next world, what we call Olam Haba, right? All the righteous will get their portion, their portion of the world to come. You have resurrection, exactly when that happens, the whole question. But who's going to be there at the end? God, right? God's there at the end. God's there at the beginning. God's there all the way through. What was there before? God.
Mm-hmm.
What was he doing? What was he doing? Gee, I don't know. What was he doing? Right? So the Medrash says he was busy building and destroying worlds. Now, if you look at the first 6 days of creation, right? It's a very good book on the market. Anyone who wants to get it, I think it should be still available. It's called Genesis and the Big Bang. It's written by Dr. Gerald Schroeder. Dr. Gerald Schroeder, anyone who doesn't know, is a physicist, has a PhD from MIT. And whatever, he's a world-class scientist. So he wrote a book called Genesis and the Big Bang, right? Claiming or putting together the 6 days of creation with the age of the universe. Right now, so what do scientists claim today? What the world's, billion, 100 billion years old, 200 billion years old, 5 billion years old. We say it's only 5,000 years old, right? 5,700 years old. So that being the case, there seems to be a contradiction. Right, it seems to be a tremendous contradiction. Now, Dr. Schroeder says like this: if you look at creation, going against those rabbinic authorities that say that every day was 24 hours, right? If you say every day was 24 hours, you got a problem, right? But he says if you're going to, if you're looking in space, if you're somewhere in space, right, time is going to be different than if you were standing on Earth. If you're past the moon, few light years away, you're going to have a different time frame, a different time scale. So says Dr. Schroeder, you know what? That you have 6 days, but you don't know what that time frame is. One day, if you're looking here, maybe 24 hours. If you're looking near Pluto, right? We're not going to name Pluto because Pluto got demoted, poor Pluto, right? Not a planet anymore. But if you're looking out in space, how long does that day last? 1,000,000 years? 10 million years? So it depends where the clock is. So his whole thing is just to, cut short the book here. If you don't want to buy it, the whole, and I don't get any percentage of it. Actually, it probably cost me double. But in any case, the book itself, he says that depends where you are in the world, right? So that one day, again, could, you have an X factor. Where are you standing in the world? That's why he claims that on the 5th day, God created animals, right? This is why evolution can never be true. He says on the 5th day, right, God created animals. Now, the claim of evolution, right, so we'll all be heretics for a second. The claim of evolution is you start from for a paramecium to a hydra or a hydra paramecium. You get these, small creepy crawly things, the bigger creepy crawly things, till eventually you get to man. So the claim is that an animal very similar to man is a monkey, right? Everyone will agree a monkey is very similar to man. There's a difference, if I remember correctly, there's a difference of 1% DNA. In other words, 99% of monkey and a human are the same, right? There's a 1%, I think there's a 1% difference. So Dr. Schroeder said, okay, the 5th day, let's say on that day, let's say it was 1,000,000 years. Let's say it was 1,000,000,000 years, right? Whatever the time frame is of that day, right, that the scientists say. How many mutations every second would you need to change a monkey into a human? Right? So the answer is more time than is given according to scientists. In other words, if you take a mutation every second, A mutation every second to take a monkey from a human, to make a monkey into a human, which is a difference in 1% DNA. 1%. We're not talking about a hydra to a paramecium, to a caterpillar, to a butterfly, to a tadpole, to, okay, let's go down the chain, right? Until you get to a human. So it says, Dr. Schroeder, you know what? If that time frame is 5 billion years, you don't have enough time. You don't have enough historical time, even according to scientists, to change a monkey into a human.
So what you're getting at...
Not to mention they never found the missing link. The last missing link they ever found was about 15, 20 years ago. They found a set of teeth and jaw fragments and a jawbone. That was like the closest thing. But if you have a 1% difference in DNA, then you need more than 5 billion years in order for every second to make a mutation, change a monkey into a human. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what is the connection with that to dinosaurs that you're trying to connect to?
So the point is that what is the point? The point is if God is busy destroying worlds, right? If he's busy, building and destroying worlds, you could have worlds, that are much older than this world. In other words, or this world could look much older than it really is. In either case, you could have God busy, building, destroying world. The dinosaurs, if they were part of that world, so it's very easy to say. We could say that they were part of that world and they got destroyed, right? Or they were still around, maybe around the time of the flood, and then got destroyed through that because there are different, different fossil records where you had these like woolly mammoths and other type of animals that were in one continent and ended up somewhere else, and according to logic and how far they could walk and how fast they could walk, in human history it's impossible. It had, something had to throw them from one place to another that he could describe by the flood. So so in previous lives, meaning in previous worlds, so dinosaurs could have existed, right? We don't have a problem with that. Let's say it was 5 billion years old, 5 billion years ago in another world that God destroyed, that didn't make it, didn't make it to this world, right? That's what he was busy, according to the measures. That's what he's busy doing. So why couldn't there be dinosaurs there?
Yeah,
could have had dinosaurs. You could have dinosaurs there as well,
Okay.
Or in theory, that's what people ask. What about the age of the universe? That people claim that that the world is is 1 billion years old, whatever, and we always say it's 5,700 years old. One thing to keep in mind is that there are many times in the Torah that if you don't learn it properly, you can be made into a heretic. For instance, when the Torah says in Genesis, I guess because we're in Genesis over here, if we're in Genesis and the Torah says, God says, let us make man, right? Who's us? Right? Us is, he's talking the heavenly court, right? Rashi says, because he doesn't need to be talking to anybody, but it says it in the plural, right? So it shows God's humility, right? God says, let me see what's going on in Sodom. I will go down myself. Does God need to go down? He doesn't need to go down. God knows what's going on himself, but it gives the ability for a person to make a mistake. Someone could say, oh, it says, let us make man. It must be there's more than one God. Right? Why would God do that? To give people free will. Maybe this world appears to be, 10 billion, trillion, zillion years old. Maybe it's supposed to appear that way. Why? To get people to say, oh, look, science doesn't correspond with Torah. If science doesn't correspond with Torah and we're all rational thinkers, it must mean that the Torah is wrong. Now, people use that as a block, and they'll say, "Oh, you have to be, you have to critically think." A lot of science is based on hypotheses.
Okay.
That are not necessarily,
Pardon me.
Not necessarily proven, at all. It's based on, this, that, and the other thing, and they'll say, "Well, because of this, because of that, that's my conclusion." Well, that's tremendously. That's tremendously false. You're basing it on something that, you say, well, it must be this, as someone once told me many years ago, that how do they prove how things are, how old things are, is by carbon dating, right? And it could be they do it by other ways now, but the only way you can prove it by carbon dating is how long carbon was in, how long carbon's been in, in the environment, in the atmosphere.
Okay.
Right? So many say it hasn't been around billions of years. It's only been around like 5,000 something years. So if you're going to use carbon dating, almost goes against the grain, because it's going to prove, what we wanted to show. But but again, the fact that it could be a billion years old or not a billion years old doesn't really matter. The question is what clock, according,
Sure.
I think it's a great book. I think people should get it, to give more clarity, certainly more than I'm giving it, on on the age of the universe, and he shows beyond the shadow of a doubt, at least according to physics, right? Anyone into physics, I think you'll enjoy it, because it shows that there's no, that there isn't a contradiction. It's just a question where you are, on the globe, in the universe, what clock you're going according to.
Okay, so summarize for me then, back on the dinosaurs on a very elementary level. What does Judaism teach? Does Judaism teach that, yes, there were dinosaurs and here's how we know? Or, what's the whole point? It's kind of like there's, if we have all the links and there is no missing link to a T-Rex, for example, I mean, is there something besides Job? Not, for me, that it doesn't really need to be anything else, but I'm just saying in general, what's Judaism's view?
I don't necessarily know any other,
okay,
any other sources except except for the, the great sea creature talks in Genesis, but that's not talking about,
right.
That's not talking about the Leviathan. Leviathan's a different, it's a different, it's a different beast. If we're going to go into the same, the same argument about the age of the universe and how it looks or whatever, and if we do have, tremendous fossils of dinosaurs, so to speak, could they have lived? Could they have grown that way? I don't necessarily know that it's, it's a contradiction. If they lived in previous worlds and were destroyed, that would make it much easier also.
Sure.
You wouldn't have a problem with that, because they grew up in a different time. Right? In a different time before, before this world, not before time, meaning, like when JC came on the scene, like nothing else happened. Right? Or Muhammad's flight from Mecca to Medina. Before that, nothing happened. Right? So we're talking about a universe that was in existence before, before any of us came onto the scene. I mean, could have been destroyed, could have been put back together,
that's kind of what I'm thinking too.
Tie it together, whatever. That's not,
like you said.
For us, that's not a contradiction.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so now I'm trying to figure out for the closing segment of the show, you're trying to decide whether I should go ahead and stick with the Cain situation, the Adam and Eve and Cain and the children situation, or something more fitting to the topics we're already on, which would be aliens. Because you mentioned Rashi earlier, and how, what was God doing all this time? He was busy creating the other worlds, right? And so, or busy with the other worlds. And so, part of the thing in my mind, I'm thinking, people ask me, do you believe in aliens? I honestly don't know, and I really don't even care. It's not the point. Point is it possible that there are? And if so, let's explain it a little bit, because the only thing I can think of is, if we've got all these just billions and billions of stars and planets and space, and to think that Earth is the only stone that God created that had life on it, to me almost seems kind of ridiculous. But maybe it's true. I don't know. Like I said, I don't really care, and I don't really have a particular belief, but I would like to know what you think about it.
It's not a contradiction if there would be other life on another planet. So, that's really not going to stop what we do, right? I mean, why should that, is that going to stop a person from being an Orthodox Jew if there is or there is not, if there's not, life on this planet? If there's life on other planets, it's really a non-starter. It's not even, if a person believes in it, does it make them a heretic, right?
Right.
Could there be other types of life? Why not? I mean, if there was, if God put, if God put the earth here, and he said, okay, let the trees grow, let the grass grow, let the flowers, animals are going to come, going to start them from scratch. If he wanted to put life somewhere else, he could have also. right? He could create some, I don't know, some weird looking, dorky looking, I don't know, whatever, some creature living on another planet, doing God's will on that planet. Could it be? I don't know. Could there be life in a frozen tundra? They're finding stuff at the bottom of the ocean. Who knows, right? It could be other species, seemingly out there that we haven't found. But that's not a contradiction. It's not a contradiction to Torah. If we find life on it, different type of life source, okay. If not, also okay. It doesn't really change. Doesn't really change whether you have an apple and you're going to make a blessing on it or not.
Right. Yeah.
you
Good
know,
point.
or,
Right.
or keeping Shabbos. The question, the question really is, what if a person's in space? What if you're on you're on a space shuttle, you're there for however long, every single second you have to be wearing tefillin because like every time every time you turn it's like sun up, right? So you always have to be, either praying or doing something else. Like what? How do you observe things while in space? That I hear, people grappling with, how does which planet you go by, where do you see the sun, how does it count, whatever, all these, there are a lot of different things that, can certainly come up, in observance, so that would be an interesting, an interesting thing, to look into, like, a certain observance is what you would do in prayer and, and Shabbos, when would you keep Shabbos, for instance, like, all these different things, that might be more of a practical, definitely more of a practical ramification than certainly, whether there's life, life on another planet or not. For us, it's really a non-starter because it really doesn't matter. If there is, okay, it's another, other things. God has, his messengers in heaven also, right? The planets, set up and do certain things. They're set up in a certain way, etc. Obviously, they can't go outside their own, their own free will. The Rambam, Maimonides, speaks about it in Guide to the Perplexed, like a planet sitting. I don't know exactly how a planet sins, but whatever. They're also messengers. They also have to do, God's will. Could it be that God put it in such a way that on this planet there could be life? Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Does it, is it gonna stop you from, praying tomorrow? Certainly not. If someone would say, if Abraham, when I was in college, right, this is the thing that either, made you an atheist or made you Orthodox. If Abraham didn't exist, would that stop you from putting on tefillin? Right? It's kind of an interesting philosophical question, but what's the obvious answer? Of course, if Abraham didn't exist, we wouldn't do anything.
Right.
We wouldn't have Isaac, we wouldn't have Jacob, we wouldn't have the Jewish peoples, of course. It's a stupid rhetorical question, right? But if these other things didn't happen or it did happen, it doesn't affect my life one way or another. So, a person wants to drink the Kool-Aid and say, yeah, 100%, I saw the movie, there are aliens, they exist, fine. Doesn't make you a heretic. If you don't believe in it, in aliens, doesn't make you righteous either. So, in either way, you're going to be, I think you're going to be safe. It is definitely, an interesting, an interesting question, but on a practical, level, not going to change anybody's life one way or the other.
Sure. Okay, well, we got, pardon me, we have 10 minutes left. So I guess we'll revert back to the very first question that I mentioned as we started, just to squeeze it in, and like I said, we'll talk about it a little bit, and if we need to do more on the show, we can. Okay, so big question is, if Adam and Eve were the first, were the only people created at creation, a lot of you've heard this question before and use it from a different angle, but I'm going to present a different, a specific question regarding Cain, and we'll kind of blend it all together. So, if Adam and Eve were the only ones created, of course we don't know how old Cain and Abel were when that incident happened, but when God sent Cain away, and marked him, and so that anybody who would touch him or would kill him would be cursed. Who's he talking about? I mean, if they were like the only ones and all they had was brothers and sisters, who else could possibly kill him? I mean, what's the whole point? And if you really want to talk about, who did Cain and Abel marry? That'd be interesting as well.
Okay, they were created when they were born. They each had a twin, right? So each one having a twin. Well, I guess you save money, right? I guess you save money by inviting one side, one side to the wedding. Look, she lives in the same house. She slept on the bed above me. Like, okay, we're gonna save a lot of money here. At the same time, so that's who they married, right? Cain and Abel had twin sisters, right? So, they had children. They had children from that, and then they had children. They had children with others, etc. And that's how you got, the population. So there were other people, right? Not, that came from them. Don't forget, they had another brother, right? Seth. They had another,
Right,
that's where Noah comes from, right? So if you say he had a twin, so that's where that tribe came from, even though, or those people came from, even though Torah doesn't, Torah doesn't mention that. So then it's not so hard to understand where everyone comes from, because they all come from the same, it's all one big happy family. They all stem from the, they all send from the same, they all descend from the same place. If they all descend, from the same place, then, then that question sort of goes by, goes by the wayside. But it's interesting, Cain never, how did Cain get killed? Right? He got killed by Lamech because he had a sign on his forehead. God made a sign on his forehead that animals stayed away. Right? Because he's supposed to, the curse was he's supposed to be killed after 7 generations. Right? 7 generations came Lamech. Right? And Lamech ended up killing him pretty much by accident. You know who it was. Right? But at the same time, he ended up, he ended up killing him, and that's where, that's where the people, that's where the people came from. That's where the, the population was, and then then it branched up. Then it branched out to different, to different nations, and to different groups, and all that. That's where, when Abraham comes on the scene, and and he came from Mesopotamia, right? So, he left Ur Kasdim, which is really part of the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia. So, he didn't want someone actually just asked me this today. Someone want to know why did Abraham send Yitzhak only to marry someone from his family, not from the Canaanites, right? So the Canaanites were tremendously immoral. Now, his family were tremendous idolaters, right? His father, a tremendous idolater, sold idols for a living. So he didn't come from such great stock either, but his stock was better than the Canaanites, right? So from there, you have all these, other, other groups, other nations, that stem from them, and that's where we have, that's eventually where we get the 70 nations, etc. But it stems from, it stems, I mean, it's kind of funny, not funny, but, kind of funny, ironic, in the sense that, why not just have, many more people? Let Adam have 10 kids, 20 kids, I don't know, whatever the case is, instead of, having it, that each brother has a sister, right? Each brother has a twin. So if each brother has a twin, why, I don't have a good answer for that, but that's
Okay.
what the Medrash says, that they were created together. Otherwise you got a major question when it says that, when it says that they had children, whatever, it doesn't seem like there's anyone else in the world. That's where the base of the question is. So the Medrash says that each one was born with a twin, and that would get you out of the problem for that.
Okay, gotcha. So if, for example, because back then, pardon me, they lived, 700-800 years, whatever the case may be. So one family could literally have lots and lots of kids, especially if they're having twins, and especially if they stay fruitful during those times. So it would be it's kind of like the whenever the sons of Jacob went to Mitzrayim, with only 69 or whatever the case may be, and then in in just that little bit of time, that 200 something years, there was like over 3 million or whatever the case may be. Some men, women,
Right.
and children.
Well, that's because each woman had 6 children in one shot. So
right.
Imagine,
That's what I mean.
She goes through 3 births. Wow, 25 kids. That's pretty impressive. Got a whole football team. got a whole clan over here myself. So, but that was done miraculously.
So
that was done tremendously miraculously.
So I can see how if a similar situation happened at creation with Adam and Eve, and they had so many children, and they would live for so long, they could have even that many more children. I mean, it wouldn't be really too hard to wrap your head around, because, like, for example, I remember as a kid going to a family reunion with my mom, and my gosh, there was probably 150 people, and we were all related. And I was thinking, that's crazy. Because, now I can't even think I might have a brother and a cousin. But when you increase those numbers, but then you have other families who literally have 10, 12 kids, and then their kids have 10, 12 kids. Before you know it, you got 3 generations, and there's well over 300 people there. And it's like, so if that's so achievable now, it doesn't seem to be far-fetched at all.
The funny thing is today, I have a neighbor, that has 18 kids, and she has a grandchild older than one of her kids, right? So
that's neat.
So I have a friend of mine, the youngest of 10, and so his oldest sister is like 20 years older than him. So he's got nieces and nephews older than his wife. So it's like, you can definitely, you can definitely have that. Like in my own family, I have 7 kids, right? And my daughter got married at 18, so I have a grandson that's 3.5, 4, and my son is 6.
That's funny.
So like,
wow.
It's actually kind of funny. So at the party Friday night, the Shalom Zocher, by after the Friday night after my daughter gave birth, so my son was 1.5 years. It was 2 years old, running around. He goes, I'm an uncle. I'm like, no, you idiot, you're an uncle. He goes, right, I'm an uncle. So like, he's a big bad uncle, and so they share the toys together, they take baths together. It's actually,
that's funny.
It's actually kind of, it's funny to see. But in those instances, you can certainly have that. Today, most people have 1.5 kids and a few. Maybe a few dogs and, vacation place and whatever. That's it. You never get to that. And lucky if your kids get married, or you even get married for that matter. So, it is pretty ironic how it works, but you're 100% right, because, you have these connections. It doesn't take that long to branch out. And then once you branch out, it's pretty incredible from 2 people.
Yeah.
Like this friend of mine has got 10, has got 9 siblings. I saw at one of his kids' weddings, all the families, it's one had 7 kids, one had 8 kids, whatever. Just with the family itself, it's like 150 people.
Right.
Like, that's just unbelievable.
And that's just, and that's limiting, their oldest age to 100, if you will. Imagine if they lived to 800. It's like just that one family. Multiply it by 8.
Right.
So easily, actually more than that, because it's compound interest.
You can have somebody become a great grandfather like at the age of 60. Like that's not that's not out of the realm of that's not out of the realm of possibility. So all things being equal, it's an incredible thing to see, because I'm always fond of saying, when the Torah works, it works unbelievably. When it fails, in the ground. There's nothing. Most people know by me, it's either like one way or the other. It's either it works, or it doesn't work, and that's it. So I'm very glad to see, like by my Rebbe's family, and anytime I go to like a grandkid's wedding, it's just unbelievable to see what the families are and who they're related to and who they're connected to, and when it works, it's just it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to be definitely to be a part of.
That's awesome. Rabbi, it's been fun. We've covered a lot of really crazy topics in one show. So if any of you guys out there want to hear more on a specific topic, let us know. Or if you got any ideas for future shows for controversial issues, feel free to send Rabbi Coffman a message. Don't message me, homie.
Send me all the hate mail. Go ahead. I love it.
Oh man, that's crazy. Okay, Rabbi, thank you again for your time. It's been fun. It always is. And thank you all for tuning in. Love you guys, and we'll see you guys next week. Hashem willing. Shiva Tov, everyone. Shiva Tov, everybody.
Don't be scared. We'll see you next week.
That's an official warning. Just letting you know.
You've been warned. Exactly.
חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה והכמיהה. חושבים דוברים לובשים בכל האופנים, זה טבעם של אנשים שונים. נזכור בסוף כולנו שותפים, חשוב תמיד להיות אנושיים. לובשים בכל האופנים, זה טבעם של אנשים שונים. נזכור בסוף כולנו שותפים, חשוב תמיד